Warbles on a lot here with First Dog on the Moon, 29th of October.
Good evening. And what brings you to this forsaken castle atop this distant mountain peak in a blizzard?
Hello, can you help me, please? I'm lost in this snowstorm.
And who might you be?
I used to be Malcolm Turnbull. But now, I'm not so sure.
I see.
I've been wandering around in a sort of daze ever since I became Prime Minister.
Wait one moment, please. Paul, I thought I told you to turn that off. Are you talking to me? Oh, for God's sake. Paul Keating, former Prime Minister Keating, would you please turn off the dramatic chord machine? Why, of course. I'm sorry, where were we?
I'm lost in this terrible snowstorm.
Ah, yes, the fickle, icy winds of political expedience. They'll freeze your ghoulies off in a matter of seconds.
Oh, I wouldn't know about that.
Well, anyway, you're just in time.
Just in time? What's going on?
Oh, why don't you know? This is the Chris Mitchell Home for Bewildered Former Prime Ministers, and you're just in time for the feast.
Is that the machine again?
No, that was a real one.
What is this place?
It is a terrible secret, known only to a select few. But no Australian Prime Minister has ever willingly given up the top job. They've all had to be dragged out, drooling and screaming. They all go quite mad, starting with Menzies. He never recovered. He spent his last years collecting Pokemon, and it hadn't even been invented yet.
Oh, how tragic. Although it does sound rather innovative.
Don't you start. Sorry. It always happens. They're completely unable to adapt to normal society. Once they've been Prime Minister, they all end up here eventually one way or another, firmly convinced that if only the electorate and the party and the media and the rest of the country had left them alone, they would have been able to save the country. Here's someone you might remember. Any boss who's sex. He's a bum. It's all right. His imaginary friend Blanche will be along any minute now. Over here, this is the Peter Costello ward. All right, it's not. That's just our little joke. It's the John Howard wing, and obviously that's home to...
Jeanette, I have my tracksuits. I have to be ready for my appearance in the Hague. Start up to.
He's former Prime Minister Gillard.
Blue ties! Blue ties! Do I see? What's down those stairs?
Oh, we don't go down there. That's where they keep killing.
That was another real one, wasn't it?
You don't know the half of it.
Where's Tony?
Ah, well, Tony isn't here yet. He'll be here eventually, quite soon now, but first...
Oh, well, it looks like the storm has blown over. I should be getting back.
Oh, no, Malcolm. You really don't understand. With Eric and Corey... Oh, just a quick jab, Malcolm. Just a little pinprick.
Welcome to the Hotel California. Such a lovely place, such a lovely place, such a lovely place.
And that's it for Sunday Extra this week. Some of you may be thankful for that. If you missed anything.
Yeah, what a week it's been. I think the highlight was when the Muslim state of the Gambia, because that's what they call it, announced that it was pulling out of the World Court. In fact, they called it the World Caucasian Court rather than the World Criminal Court. Their theory is that because their ex-president is being prosecuted, and because quite a bunch of ex-African dictators have been prosecuted, but because David Blair and John Howard and George W. Bush have not been prosecuted over invading and occupying Iraq, therefore, in the perceptions of the people of the Muslim Republic of the Gambia, it's a racist organisation that exists only to persecute and prosecute Africans. So, yeah, they've pulled out of the World Court. I hadn't really been aware of what a ridiculous bunch of half-wits was running the Gambia, the Muslim Republic of the Gambia. Yeah, it's... So that was the shocker of the week. Gambia's dropped out of the World Court. What else has been happening around the world? Some friends of my mother's who live in Brisbane, who have a daughter-in-law who comes from Russia, have been visited by the daughter-in-law's mother, and the daughter-in-law's mother's fairly upset and agitated because apparently the Russian expatriate diaspora has been in recent receipt of communications from Moscow summoning them back to the mother country, particularly the males from, say, 15 to 45, what you might call military age, who are being recalled to Russia. I don't know whether they're being conscripted into the military, but the word militia was mentioned in the conversation. So I heard that little story while filling my mother's woodbox. I thought it was fairly interesting. Behold, that night, floating in my feed on YouTube by the synchronicity, there was a BBC story. No, it was a Guardian story detailing how Russia spent 4 days last week conducting a civil defence drill. And they've shined up and painted all of their nuclear bomb shelters, and they had citizens being shown how to put up a dome tent in the middle of the living room floor so they could sit in the dome tent, and the fallout would be mostly outside the house, and any that did creep into the house wasn't going to get into the dome tent. And they had a whole lot of people running around with Geiger counters and more people in the full containment nuclear, biological, chemical zoot suits, which on a cold day in winter in Europe, I suppose you could do that. Don't know that it'd be much good in a country like Australia. Nobody could survive for more than half an hour inside one of those NBC suits, walking around in the sun out here. So yeah, apparently things are getting a little bit interesting in Ukraine and Syria, and what seems to be pissing the Russians off is the idea that NATO naval vessels, which have multi-phase capabilities, so the NATO theory is that they're maybe launching little conventional cruise missiles in at whoever they don't like in the Syrian contest, and that's a variable feast as to who's fighting who. But that means NATO's getting into the Black Sea with their navy, which probably is armed with at least medium-range ballistic missiles, and some of them are nuclear tipped. So the Russians are feeling pretty much like the Americans did when Khrushchev put missiles into Cuba. That's what it feels like to them. And of course, NATO is nothing if not self-righteous. So they can't see a problem with what they're doing, and they're getting the shits at the Russians for feeling territorial about their own front yard swimming pool sort of thing. President Rodrigo Duterte from the Philippines has done multiple backflips in diametrically opposing directions. He's gone to China and he's told the Chinese that he was going to separate himself from the excited states of Norte Americano, and he said that was going to be in an economic sense as well as a military sense, and he expected the Chinese to flood his country with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of development and investment money. And he suggested that he should then go to Moscow and talk to Mr. Putin, because he thought Russia and China with a Filipino alliance would be a world-beating combination. And then as soon as he got back from China, he said he didn't mean any of it, because he's obviously got an economic dependence on American financial connections. The Americans have been walking around in circles scratching their heads saying, what the? And meantime, there's been the Bill and the Hillary show. Sorry, the Trump and the Hillary show. I mean, Bill keeps getting dragged into it. And let's face it, some women are prepared to remain in a marriage with a man who shags other women, chases other women, pursues other women, flirts with other women. For whatever reason, convenience, financial connections, shared past history, they stay in the relationship. She's one of them. You know, people tackle her on Bill Clinton's behaviour, and she says, well, he's a hard dog to keep on the porch. So she's admitting that he's a lowhound. He's got no more self-control than any other dog. He is doomed, driven by the way he's built. He just has to go sniffing at the tail of any bitch he thinks might be in heat. Donald Trump is a lowhound. And Donald Trump was losing pretty badly when, you know, a dozen women have come forward saying that he's grabbed them and groped them and treated them badly. And there's no doubt in anybody's mind that the timing of the tape from the bus plus the women, I mean, those people have been bringing that shit forward for years to the Democrats, and the Democrats have had a big, you know, room full of dirty shit to drop on Donald Trump's head at the right time. And they thought they had the timing right. They were counting on having overcome the business of the emails and the server and the, you know, boohoo sob. She's like Caesar's wife. She doesn't have to be pure. She has to be seen to be pure. And you know, apparently using the wrong server is technically a stain on the reputation. So the Democrats thought they'd got that one covered, and the FBI decides to come up with an ambiguous telegram that serves to rally the flagging support for Trump. Well, you know, the FBI is a creation of J. Edgar Hoover, and he was a closet poofter, and closet poofters often affect a veneer of hypermasculinity, and that involves misogyny. So, of course, the culture of the FBI is going to be misogynistic because they were run by a closet poofter for 40 fucking years. That's kind of as a given. So that's just more political meddling. What can you expect? The next critical thing is, does Hillary Clinton have yet another overwhelming shot in the locker to fire back at Trump? At the moment, there's no sign of it. She looks like she's been ambushed. So that's disquieting. I think a lot of people have been banking on the idea that she'd vanquished the threat from Trump. I don't think she has. It's entirely possible that there could be a contrarian landslide, just the Brexit thing. You know, the pollsters go out and poll people who say what they think is politically correct to say in front of a pollster, and then they go out and they do something different when it comes election day. The fact that the Yanks don't have compulsory voting means that you could get 40% of the population turn up to vote, or you could get 60%, but those are kind of the margins. And if 40% turn up and that 40% decides by 1%, you finish up with 21% of the American population deciding who the next president is. And technically, I think Trump's probably got about 25% of the popular support across the country. And if all of them turned up to vote, and if half of Hillary's supporters decided they can't vote for her because, you know, she's just too establishment, crony, capitalist, corrupt, this email's the last straw for him, yeah, Trump could get in. And then nobody has the faintest clue what he's going to do, because he doesn't seem to have any plan beyond self-promotion. He's just Yeah, he's justifiably a self-promoter because he didn't get enough cuddles when he was supposed to be being breastfed, and overcompensated inferiority complexes are responsible for a lot of shit in the world. And that's what he is. He's an overcompensated inferiority complex on legs, stalking the landscape, trying to make it over in his image. So I think we're on the upload limit. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Have a nice day. Ciao.